The two big Glasgow teams have had mixed fortunes on and off the pitch in recent years, and both have just announced their financial results for 2018-19. This season, Celtic won the domestic treble and Rangers were runners-up in the Scottish Premiership. So, how do their finances compare? Clubs generate income from three sources: Matchday, broadcasting and commercial. Compared to the rest of Scottish football, where many clubs are so small that they're not legally obliged to show income and expenses in their accounts, Celtic and Rangers dominate as expected. Both fans have committed fan bases, and this is reflected in ticket sales, with Celtic averaging nearly 58,000 every match at home last season and Rangers well over 49,000. Matchday revenue is effectively the number of tickets sold per match times average ticket price times number of home matches played. With both clubs close to selling out every match and fans resistant to significant ticket price increases, growth is linked to maximising the number of matches played. Rangers' increase in 2018-19, for instance, was due to reaching the group stage of the Europa League, where Celtic reached the last 32 of that competition. The two clubs are of course significantly ahead of Hearts, who have the third highest matchday income in the Scottish Premiership with just over £5 million. Such is the level of support from fans that the clubs would be behind only the Premier League's Big Six clubs within a table of Premier League matchday income. Broadcast income is a combination of sums earned from domestic and UEFA competitions. Both clubs benefit and suffer from the complex distribution methods used to reward clubs by UEFA. Because BT Sport pay the largest sum for Champions and Europa League rights in Europe, Scottish and English clubs benefit from this being distributed via what is known as the market pool. Scotland's relatively low UEFA coefficient, which measures historical success by national teams in Europe, means that their share of this pot is far lower than that of England, Germany, Italy, Spain and France. The Celtic's broadcast income was higher than that of Rangers because they made more progress in the domestic cups and in Europe. Celtic also had more money from yet another of UEFA's pots of cash, which is linked to overall performance over the last decade in Europe. With Rangers being in the lower leagues of Scottish football for some of this time and not qualifying for Europe, they earned far less money from this source. The gap between Celtic and Rangers compared to the Premier League is well known. What is perhaps more alarming for fans of both clubs is that they are also behind many teams in the English Championship too, who are earning parachute payments that actually exceed the sums earned by European participation. Commercial income is a combination of sponsorship, advertising, kit manufacturing, merchandise, and hospitality. Celtic again have had an advantage here over the years. Rangers had a significant increase in 2018-19 due to the Steven Gerrard effect, as sponsors proved willing to pay more to be associated with such a high-profile individual. Retail sales increased substantially at Ibrox last season, but are still not maximising their potential due to an ongoing legal dispute with other parties, including Mike Ashley, the Newcastle owner, which has restricted sales and led to some fans boycotting products. Now, the combination of all of the above has resulted in Celtic generating revenue over £250 million more than Rangers over the last 6 years. While the gap last year was the narrowest for some time, Celtic still had a £30 million advantage over Rangers, and that's before considering player sales. Celtic also had other income of £8.8 million as compensation from Leicester City for headhunting Brendan Rodgers and his backroom team partway through the season. Now, the main costs for clubs are in respect of players, in the form of wages and transfer fee amortisation. The two big Glasgow clubs have wage bills far in excess of other Scottish clubs, and Celtic's higher income allows them to pay higher wages than their rivals. The wage bills of both clubs were travelling in different directions last season though. Celtic's total fell by 5%, with Rangers rising by over a third, as the cost of employing Steven Gerrard plus the players he recruited for the club resulted in wages increasing by £10 million. Transfer fee amortisation is the cost of acquiring a player's registration spread over the length of the contract. So when Rangers signed Connor Goldson from Premier League team Brighton for an estimated £1.5 million on a 4-year deal, this results in an amortisation cost of £375,000 a year for 4 years. Celtic have a far bigger amortisation charge in recent years, partly due to winning 9 Premiership titles in a row. The income that such success brings domestically and in European competition has then been invested in player signings. Rangers' spending has increased noticeably since they returned to the top division, and this is shown by the rise in their amortisation charge. In addition, both Rangers and Celtic reported impairment costs of £1.6 million and £2 million respectively, in relation to players signed whose poor performances meant their values were reduced in the balance sheet. Rangers' other costs increased by 70% to over £21 million. Part of this is due to extra stewarding and policing required at Europa League matches at Ibrox, but also an alarming £3.6 million increase in legal costs as Rangers' disputes with Sports Direct rumbled on. In recent years, Celtic have made profits, selling one or two high-profile players each year, and 2018-19 was no exception, as Moussa Dembele was sold to Lyon for about £20 million, having cost the club a fraction of that sum from Fulham. The sale of Kieran Tierney took place after the accounting year had ended, and that will contribute £25 million to next year's figures. Rangers, by contrast, have not been able to sell players for such large sums, although the prolific Alfredo Morelos is likely to command a high price should he leave the club in the next year or so. Under Steven Gerrard last season, Rangers outspent Celtic for the first time in many years in terms of player signings, as the club tried to narrow the performance gap. The profits are total income less costs. Celtic's profits fell significantly in 2018-19, but was still substantially ahead of Rangers' performance. If a club is losing money, then the only way to survive is to sell off assets or have investment from lenders or shareholders. Rangers generated £2 million from share issues and £8 million from loans in 2018-19 to plug the gap from the day-to-day losses, whereas Celtic needed no such funding.